When I came to Ulithi and sat down with the community, one of the first things they said was, what do you think we should do? Do you have some solutions that, might work out here? And that question struck me so deeply, and I just remember thinking, I don't know what you should do. It's not my reef. It's not my world out here. I love the ocean. I study the ocean. I know a fair amount about the ocean, but I don't know about you, and I don't know about your reefs, and I don't even know how to answer that question. And I said that to them. I said, I think what I would say to you is that you have to come up with that solution, and you have to tell me how I can help you. And I think they were kind of surprised by that. And they said, well, usually people like you and groups like you come in and give us a plan. And I said, well, I can't do that. I don't want to give you a plan. First of all, I don't want to be responsible for giving you a plan that doesn't work. And then you're going to say, well, you see, your plan didn't work. And I want whatever failure might happen in whatever we co-create here to be your failure. And this way we can work on it and make it work. We can figure out what isn't working and then make it better. And I want any success that comes out of our collaboration here to be your success, because this is your fish, it's your life, it's your culture, it's your reef. I'm gonna go home at the end of this, and I'm gonna go have my life and my home. And I will always be connected to you, but it ultimately is yours. Community-led, I think, is more important now than ever, because so many of the habitats that collectively we, the collective global we, are trying to protect are stewarded and lived on by indigenous peoples. And if we bring in ideas from the West, we this time the West, we will not be supporting people. B, it will lead to an unraveling of their own systems. And I think ultimately they have a much lower chance of working, because people who know their lands and seas and who need to eat from their lands and seas and whose traditions and cultures are built around their lands and seas, by removing that, it can't possibly work. There is no world in which that can work. There's such a movement now to incorporate indigenous knowledge into Western science and to sort of blend these knowledge systems and give credit to the indigenous peoples and their knowledge systems. But I still feel like that work is done by incorporating the indigenous knowledge into the Western science. And by incorporating indigenous knowledge into Western science, we are making an assumption that it is the Western science that leads it, and indigenous knowledge should inform it. And I think our model really is trying to get us to look at it a completely different way. It's not my place to say, stop using spear guns, they're causing problems. It's not my place to say, that's not a traditional way of fishing, so you shouldn't be doing it. You should instead be using the kind of hooks you were using 500 years ago, they're better. So this is really about identifying these problems and then letting the community figure out how it is they want to address it. Most indigenous communities don't separate management from culture, tradition, social systems, because the management is woven into the fabric of the stories they tell and of the moral and ethical messages they're giving to each other. So why are all these taboos and regulations in place? Why? Ultimately, they are conservation mechanisms, but they're not put across to members of the community like that. So you don't get punished for fishing with a gear you're not supposed to fish with, because there's no system for that. Instead, you won't do that because actually it violates a cultural norm. So by coming in with a management plan, it's actually not integrating into the fabric. And this is another reason why it's so important to let communities lead this way, because they understand what those taboos are and why those taboos are in place. So through storytelling, we can collectively get down some of those really important stories into which are woven these behavioral taboos. And what we did with our storytelling project is we pulled some of those taboos out of these traditional stories and tied them directly to Western science. The science that we do, the Western science that we do, is all of it really done in a very storytelling way. What do the data tell us about what's happening on those reefs? And what do those data tell us about what's happening that may be different now than was happening even 20, even 30 years ago, and things that are changing so quickly. And how can we help tell that story, which will allow communities to be more adaptive